Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the CS Week WebEd webinar series. CS Week offers educational webinars that bring to light timely topics which impact utilities in a broad way. This is a new series for us. As many of you know, we have various series of webinars, and this is a new series that we're starting. This is the first one. My name is Rod Litke. I'm with CS Week, and I will be your moderator today. Moving forward, I think all of you know that CS Week will be in Phoenix in about 4 months. We'll be downtown in the Convention Center, April 25 to 29, so mark your calendars for that. One thing that we always do in all webinar series is that we record these for you so that you can use them later on for playback. You can refer them to your colleagues and so on. And so just to find those, all you have to do is go to our website, click on that little webinars button right there, and then that will direct you further into our website as far as finding this webinar or any other webinars you might be interested in. One thing about all of our webinar series is that you are encouraged to upload your questions at any time to the Q&A box, which is in the lower right corner of your screen. So as we go along, and we've had this often, is just 5 minutes into the session, somebody will type in a question in there. It won't be answered immediately. We'll hold all those questions till the end. But so if it strikes you that on slide 5 or whatever slide, you can enter your question at that point. Perhaps you might have to put it in context a little bit, but go ahead and do that. So today's session, which we're really pleased to present to you today, it's really a unique session as far as the utility industry goes. I'm sure that this has never been presented anywhere before. And so our session is, it could happen to anyone, the evolving challenge of phone scams targeting utility customers. And our presenters today, you can see their photos there. Jared Lawrence. Jared is the Vice President of Revenue Services at Duke Energy. He currently leads an organization of about 400 people who are responsible for billing, payments, receivables, and customer credit for over 7.2 million customers across 6 states. The other fellow that you see there standing in front of the FBI logo is Christopher Guerra. He's a Senior Manager of Risk Management, AML, Fraud Prevention, and Investigations at Blackhawk Network. I will just simply say, Christopher will introduce this later on, but Blackhawk is a major provider of prepaid products in the marketplace. You'll understand that further as this goes along today. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn this over to Jared. Go ahead, Jared.
Thank you, Rod. It's my pleasure to be with each of you today. You'll notice that my voice sounds a little scratchy, so I just ask for your forgiveness. I might have to take a pause at some point in time to get a drink because my voice has been in and out all week. I will do my best to make this as painless on the audience as possible. As Rod mentioned, my name is Jared Lawrence, and I manage the Revenue Services Organization for Duke Energy. And I've spoken with a few of you over the last several months about the plague of phone scams targeting utility customers and about the possibility of forming a collaborative effort across the utility industry to combat these criminals. My hope is that this presentation will serve as an important step toward realizing that goal. So it is my pleasure to share with you the strategies that Duke Energy has employed and also to share the hour with Christopher Guerra, whose company Blackhawk Network is doing some admirable things as well. It is not my intent to portray Duke Energy as a leader in this area. In fact, I suspect and know that many of you have employed successful strategies, which you hope you will share with the community during the Q&A and in future meetings on this topic as well. So with the stage set, let's begin. So my agenda for today is to provide a brief overview of my company. Then I'll paint a picture of the scam tactics as we at Duke Energy have observed them. I'll describe some of the strategies that we have enacted to better protect our customers, and I'll conclude then with some thoughts about how we collectively as an industry can win this fight. So on this next slide, as you can see, Duke Energy is a large multi-state utility company with 7.3 million electric customers across 6 states and 500,000 natural gas customers as well. And we're in the process of welcoming another 1.5 million natural gas customers into the family over the next year or so. So, in case any of you joining in the presentation are unfamiliar with the way that these utility scams are going down, I've provided a mock script on this slide for your information. The essence of the scam is that a caller posing as a utility representative cold calls an unsuspecting customer, often at a hectic time in their schedule, The caller identifies him or herself as a utility representative and states that the customer's account is overdue and that a utility service will be disconnected unless payment is made within the hour. The caller directs the customer to use a prepaid card or other non-traceable product. The scammers can be very convincing, particularly to customers who've been interrupted during a time when they are distracted and therefore vulnerable. So these are not new. Now, we've observed several ways of these scams targeting our customers over the past several years. In response, we have worked with law enforcement, attorneys general, local media, including the Hispanic media outreach, since in the past we saw at times a pretty high volume of calls targeting Spanish-speaking customers. In fact, our 2013 campaign earned a Gold Marcom Award, and that consisted of a barrage of radio messages out toward our target markets, national and local media outreach. We emailed 2 million customers during that time, and we were actually pleased to see that our emails on this topic had an impressive 42% open rate. However, the success of our efforts was nonetheless only modest, due in large part to limitations on law enforcement to assemble an effective investigation, particularly since those investigative trails typically seem to lead offshore at some point. So then there were some notable shifts in 2015. First of all, we at Duke Energy were receiving a notable increase in scam reports from our customers, and those calls from our customers were becoming much more complex. Scammers were starting to spoof Duke Energy caller IDs, and some had even set up a Duke Energy-like IVR, and were increasingly effective in convincing our customers that they had access to actual account information. Furthermore, with the surfacing of several notable data breaches among retailers, financial institutions, there was heightened alarm within Duke Energy. And that's how this latest scam prevention effort within Duke Energy was reignited. So in my role, as I dug into the nature of the challenge posed by these scams, it became clear that we needed a concerted effort across multiple departments within Duke Energy. So we formed our scam SWAT team, which consisted of key leaders in customer services, technology, communications, sourcing, and of course legal. And we established a charter laying out our objectives. Those objectives were, number one, to begin gathering and analyzing information from the scam reports that were coming from our customers. Secondly, verifying the integrity of our own systems and security. Third was developing customer awareness campaigns, basically trying to make them new and more effective. And the fourth was seeking opportunities to collaborate with peer companies and others in the chain that scammers were exploiting. So I'd like to spend a few minutes sharing with you how each SWAT team group contributed to that effort. We'll start with my area with Duke Energy, which is customer services. And as you can see, customer services includes our customer care organization and my group, revenue services. Being on the front lines with our customers, we, of course, are well positioned to gather data on the scam tactics. To that end, our customer care team created a scam tracking database and a tool for our CSRs to quickly gather information from customers about their brushes with scammers. We also interrupted a small group of customers who were concerned that their data had been compromised to really understand what their experience was. Once we had our hands on some useful data, we were able to start to follow the money trails and establish relationships with companies along that chain. So this next slide shows a few representative entries in our scam database. Not only are we capturing the location of the victim and any losses that they suffered, but also the instructions the scammers gave. This allowed us to understand the products that the scammers favor. And in fact, what we noticed early on was that one national grocery chain was showing up very frequently in the reports. So I used our account management contacts to have a conversation with that company's risk management team. And that not only led to our learning about retailers' efforts to combat these scams, this particular company also connected me with Blackhawk Network and opened my eyes to the surprisingly expansive prepaid product industry and the great things that Christopher and his company are doing, as well as some others. So this next slide summarizes the data we've gathered from mid-June through the beginning of December. A couple things to note here. First of all, these data are reported by customers. And so this is just based on incoming calls to our call center and the information we were able to gather from those calls. We are certain that there are many more scam attempts that are taking place in our service territory that are not brought to our attention. So if you look at the statistics there in the gray box, you can see that over the period of mid-June through the first week in December, our customers reported 2,017 scam attempts. Of those, 196 customers reported that they had actually lost money to a scammer, roughly about a 10% success rate on the scammer side. The total reported losses were $154,000 during that period, and the highest single loss was one customer who lost just shy of $5,000. Now, as you look at these graphs, I want you to note that last bullet there, which is that our tool was a little bit slower being ramped up in our Florida and Eastern Carolinas territories. As a result, the upward trend toward October is a little bit exaggerated, but nonetheless, we did see what we hope will prove to be a peak in October. And again, the scammers and their 10% success rate seems to be fairly consistent throughout the period, despite our awareness campaigns. Now, our outreach to retailers revealed some surprisingly strong prevention efforts, including this on-the-shelf signage at one national grocery chain, as well as efforts among many chains to train their clerks to spot and help scam victims. Their clerks are trained to identify customers who comment, perhaps look a little bit confused and flustered, look like they're unfamiliar with the prepaid products, and they're trained in some cases to ask questions to understand what they're doing and perhaps steer a customer away from making a bad purchase. And I've been highly impressed with the efforts of the prepaid product companies to protect customers. You'll hear more from Christopher about Blackhawk's networks, but I do need to commend them for their willingness to have our customer care centers direct callers to their hotlines to see if recovery is possible. Both in Blackhawk and in another company in the industry called Incom, I've found willing partners committed to consumer protection, but not at all concerned about our directing call volume to their hotlines. And so on this slide, I've included an excerpt from our call center script that allows our reps to basically ask those questions to determine whether it is a product of Blackhawk or Incom, and then quickly direct those customers to their hotlines to see if a recovery is possible to stop payment on those prepaid cards. So in addition to data and outreach, we performed a detailed assessment of the security of our customer data within our systems and with third-party service providers, as well as any suspicious access to customer accounts through our IVR. We did an overall assessment of our systems, and we looked specifically at the accounts of customers who were reporting scams to determine if there was any unexplained accessing of their information. So we were very happy to confirm, number one, that there was no Duke Energy customer breach. Secondly, there seemed to be no system vulnerability being exploited by scammers. We looked at the accounts of customers who had called in and saw no irregular access of our IVRs in particular, which meant that somebody was going in and trying to steal, that nobody was going in and trying to steal customer account information. And in speaking with those customers who suspected a data breach, we were able to determine that they were the victims of clever social engineering. The scammers recited convincing information, but it was ultimately made-up information. And the scammers are also very good at picking up on actual account information that is volunteered by the customer and then using that information back against the customer. So the final piece of our response that I would like to talk about is our latest customer awareness and education campaigns designed and delivered by our communications team. Here you can see our list of tactics and channels we utilize, including an outbound call campaign to our small and medium business customers. Every single small and medium business customer of Duke Energy received an outbound call during a roughly 2-month period. We use bill inserts, mobile and web placements, and media outreach. On this next slide, you can see some examples of our online content, including our fraud awareness page and one of the messages that we applied to our paper bill. And perhaps the greatest innovation, our latest efforts especially targeted the social media channels. We launched a 6-week campaign in October, and for a reasonable $7,000 budget, maybe the best $7,000 I've spent since I've been in this job anyway, we generated and delivered a lineup of simple, compelling, and shareable digital communications. This next page shows a few examples from the campaign. You can see I've included some posts from our Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn accounts. as well as the infographic that we've used in each of those channels, as well as on our website. And the results were that during the course of this campaign, we generated over 2.2 million impressions, 7,200 clicks on our scam awareness page, and we have even started tweeting the most commonly used numbers by scammers that are showing up in our scam database so that customers can start to recognize those as fraud numbers rather than legitimate Duke Energy numbers. And we also supported our social media campaign with an earned media campaign that included a news release that was placed on 167 media websites. And we actually were able to capture a scam call that we forwarded on to ABC News for use in one of their primetime broadcasts. So I'd like to conclude with an appeal for collaboration. The key to success will be sustained saturation of our communications channels with scam prevention messages. This will be most effective if the utility community can work together on customer awareness and education, and also to help law enforcement gather the data they need to pursue these criminals. So at the bottom here on this slide, to conclude on a hopeful note, I'd like to share a recent entry into our scam database that suggests that our scam prevention efforts are working. As you can see in this situation, a scammer calling himself by the name of James called up one of our customers, George, and told him that he owed us $600 and needed to make that payment immediately with a prepaid card. James sent George to a Walmart and actually stayed on the phone with him. And when he got there, the clerk recognized that the customer was the victim of a scam and refused to sell him a prepaid card. And when the customer pushed back, the clerk there actually went and got her manager, who then told George to hang up the phone on the scammer and call Duke instead. So we hope to see many more of these types of successes showing up in our scam database as we move forward and increase our outreach efforts. So in conclusion, because I believe collaboration is so important, and I'm hoping that this will form the foundation for ongoing and increased discussion across the industry, CS Week will be setting up a LinkedIn group to serve as a platform for our collaboration efforts. So please do connect with me and others in this community through that group so we can pool our efforts. I thank you for your focus on scam prevention, and I look forward to your comments and questions at the end. Finally, I'll be turning things over to Chris.
Thank you so much, Jared. So thanks everyone for your time. I really appreciate you meeting with us today. Just so you know, as a little bit of a backstory, this meeting with utility companies and law enforcement has been a huge initiative for me that's been passed down by my VP. And so I appreciate you meeting with me and allowing me the opportunity to be able to provide this information to this group. So diving right in, Blackhawk Network is a provider of prepaid products. And prepaid products take different forms, and we'll talk more about that. But just to give you a little backstory on Blackhawk Network, we are a publicly traded company. We've been around for a little while. It seems like we're a little bit in the business of acquiring more and more companies every year because we're trying to market through all the different methods of gifting, whether it be with the close of the open loop, or even actually getting into the whole market of incentives. And so it's a wide market the way the entire gifting program works, and we'll basically be able to provide you some good information in the following slides. So not all gift cards are created equal. They really do have different nuances about them with how the programs operate, how the different program managers manage the products, and hopefully we can give you guys a good amount of information moving forward. So there are really 4 different product types that are involved in the different types of scams that may be encountered. There's the closed loop products, which are really intended to be used as a gifting product, and it's really being used at the entity on which the card is intended. So if you bought a Sears gift card, you can only use it at Sears. If you bought a Target gift card, you can only use it at Target. So that's where that closed loop comes into play. You shouldn't see these types of products being utilized in the scams unless you just have someone who's really trying to be super creative with the products that they're purchasing. The next product is Open Loop. What it does is it opens up the availability for where this product can be utilized. It can basically be used anywhere that the Visa, MasterCard, or American Express symbol is accepted. So you can see how this product really offers a much wider network with where the product can be utilized and as far as its capabilities for spend. Now, these products could be utilized for some fraud, but it makes it difficult just because of the fact that typically a lot of these products are being needed at tender to be swiped, and so really it limits and restricts the fraudsters to be able to use these as openly as they would prefer, and they're limited to internet access, which is why you probably won't see these very much. Now, the GPR realm, with the accompanying reloaded product, that's really where these fraudsters like to sit. What the GPR product is, it's a general purpose reloadable. It's basically a reloadable debit card. For all the public out there, and there's millions of people out there, we call them the underbanked or the unbanked. There's a pretty decent public of people who basically cannot get a normal bank account at your traditional brick-and-mortar financial institution, and it's for a wide range of reasons. Maybe their credit isn't good enough, or maybe they bounced a couple checks when they were younger. And all of these financial institutions, these brick-and-mortar financial institutions, they use a system called check systems, and they report back and forth to each other and to this global system, providing feedback on the different type of clientele that they're banking to. And if someone bounces too many checks, then they'll report it to check systems, and then they'll call this person up, or they'll send them a letter and they'll tell them that they're closing their account down. And so when they go across the street to the neighboring bank and they'd like to open up a bank at that account, or open up an account at that bank, then basically they'll tell them the same thing. Because of the way you've been reporting check systems, we're unable to open up an account for you because we considered your activities too high risk. So after they've done the round robin and they've tried all the major brick-and-mortar institutions and even some of the smaller charter and community banks and credit unions, they've realized that they're now an underbanked population or an unbanked population. So they start looking online and they start trying to find different methods of which they can establish an account to receive their direct deposit or receive their Social Security or their SSI payments, and from which they can make purchases at online sites like Amazon. So they eventually stumble across a product like our PayPower product, or maybe the Green Dot product that you may have heard about, or the Vanilla Reloaded, or the NetSpend, or the other dozens of products that are out there that are being offered to the public. And once they find the right product that really suits them as far as the monthly service fees and the availability of products in the stores around them, then they'll make a purchase and they'll finally dive in and they'll reap all the benefits that these products have to offer. Now, once they buy this product, they go through the registration process, which we'll talk about, and one of the things that they need to do is they need to get money onto their account. Well, they can do this by direct deposit, or they can do this by purchasing what's called a reloaded pack. Now, the reloaded packs take up different form. Every company kind of has their own product, so you'll see like a money pack or a reloaded pack or a vanilla reload. It's all corresponding to the industry or to the program manager that's managing that. But think of that reloaded pack as a deposit slip. It's really a combination of a deposit slip and a cashier's check with the way it's managed, because it's basically a cash object. It's not associated to anything. It's an anonymous product. So they go into the stores and they buy this reloaded pack, and you can see on the back of it there's a little barcode that scans it, and that's how much money that they're telling the system that needs to be put on. They take that home, they punch in all the numbers, and they can apply it to their GPR card, and now they can use that money. And that's really how it functions. It's a vehicle through which they can take money from their pocket and they can apply it to their GPR card. Now, there are millions of people across the entire network of GPR products across the nation that are using these products and using them for good things and doing amazing things with them. Unfortunately, with any type of financial services product out there, there's going to be some fraudsters that are capable of manipulating the system or even exploiting certain loopholes that might be available, and we'll touch base on that. Something that we did notice as a result of the fraud that we encountered was the ability to establish a much safer environment for our fraudsters. So this slide just kind of touches base on that, but I'm going to talk more about it after we speak to the fraud piece. But just know that as the fraud is being identified, all of the program managers, Blackhawk especially, I know for a fact that I work there, makes huge efforts toward mitigating fraud and identifying new methods to to provide choke points against the fraudsters and restrict their capabilities to perpetrate the fraud. So once someone buys the general purpose reloadable product, then what they'll do is they'll have to go through some registration processes. So here's our good friend, and he says, hey, Daddy-O, I love the GPR scene. I'd like to get a GPR card. So he finds out that he can go through the process, and he does exactly that. So the validation sounds like a real blast, he says. What information is needed? So you'll see here, the same information that you would need to establish an account at Wells Fargo Bank is the very same information that you would need to establish an account through the program managers that manage these GPR products. You know, your name, physical address, social security number, date of birth. We even have a series of out-of-wallet questioning. So what we do is we'll do basically kind of a soft pull against credit to extract information that hopefully the fraudster would not have access to, like previous loans that the person might have had, previous addresses that they may have lived at, people with whom they may have shared credit or co-signed for. So it's a lot of really good information. It even throws in some red herring questions and where the answer just needs to be none of the above are true, or the answer needs to be you know, none of the addresses match, or, you know, basically what it does, it helps us to identify the red herrings versus, I mean, the good versus the bad, whether it be someone guessing or actually confirming that the piece of information is not accurate. So this kind of shows you it's a very complex model. This is just a small piece of the flow chart that's utilized for the decisioning tree when information is passed through it. A lot of criteria have to match. We even allow for fat fingers for people to accidentally punch in the wrong couple digits at the end of their social, or maybe the wrong year for their year of birth. But the decisioning model is pretty big, and we'll walk through basically the entire process. But each bank has its own model. The input that's received from customers validated against public records. The out-of-wallet questions can then follow. And once they pass, then they're super excited because then they have a huge amount of benefits that are capable to them. They can do online bill pay, they can do online shopping, they can do card-to-card transfers, they can track their spending, they can get mobile alerts. There's just a lot of information that's available to them because we want this product to be as useful to them as possible. Now, as far as the fraud that occurs, like we've said before, any time that there's a financial services product available, fraud can occur. Some of the fraud that originated, that kind of stemmed from the original, that basically this kind of fraud stemmed from, is still a practice. When Western Union and MoneyGram were the leader of the pack as far as transferring money across the U.S., these types of scams did exist, and people were being told time and time again that they owed taxes or that they owed utility bills, and they would do the same thing via Western Union and MoneyGram. So this type of a scam is not new to any environment. It's basically just a new way that they're trying to facilitate it. So they take different forms. I'm sure you've heard about the crypto locker, where it locks your computer screen and tells you that you have to buy a reloaded pack of some sort in order to pay that back. This has hit the entire network. IRS calls telling people that they owe IRS back taxes. Obviously the utility scams, which is what we're all really speaking to. There's even people out there that are posing as breeders selling puppies for very low prices, and they're duping families who are trying to buy a puppy for their kids and doing this, just basically perpetrating the same type of scam. What we call this is victim-assisted fraud. What that means is that the victim is basically assisting the fraudster with completing the scam. It's along the lines of a confidence scam. What that means is that the victim has to fall prey to it. It doesn't make it to where the blame falls on the victim, but the bottom line is that it's a lot different than a brute force type of a theft where someone's being robbed by gunpoint or their account was being hacked and money was just stolen by brute force. So there's always a sense of urgency that has to be resolved by some type of monetary compensation. In this case, it is your utility bill is past due, your lights are going to be turned off. If you don't pay the bill, then that's what's going to happen. So hurry up and get the money so that way we can pay back the bill. We follow the money everywhere it goes. So once it hits our accounts, we have the ability to see spend. Think of it in terms of a brick-and-mortar financial institution. So there's a lot of information that we have available to us to be able to combat the fraud from the tail end once it's been completed. So we can follow it from start to finish. We can provide a lot of information to law enforcement. and we try our best to identify the identity theft victims versus the good customers that are coming in, but as you can tell with the information that's being provided, there's never a silver bullet to completely mitigate the fraud. However, it is in all of our best interest to try and perpetrate the fraud, because as long as there's victims that are falling victim to this, there's always going to be a never-ending source of identity theft to perpetrate future scams and to open up future accounts, because typically when they're calling the victims and they're telling them that they owe on their utility bill or they owe back taxes or anything else, they're also getting a lot of personal information from them. Because typically what they'll say, you know, through the methods of social engineering that these fraudsters are so good at, they'll convince the victims that they need to validate their identity. So just to make sure I'm speaking to the right utility customer, if you could verify your address, it'd be great. Great, thank you for verifying your address. If you can verify your phone number, that'd be helpful too. If you don't mind validating your Social Security number, then that will help us to verify your account. So they're basically socially engineering these customers into two different things, providing them the money to facilitate the scam and providing them their personal information in order to facilitate the scams against future customers by opening up accounts where these funds can be applied to. So as long as there's a never-ending source of victims, there's a never-ending abundance of identities to for future scams. So the Blackhawk risk management team is responsible for a lot. We manage our processes and our accounts very much like you would see a typical brick-and-mortar institution manage their accounts. So there's OFAC review and money laundering review and fraud review and you know, identification models and analysis and chargebacks and disputes and STAR filings and subpoenas and everything else. So it's a very widespread amount of processes that we're responsible for. We provide a lot of information to law enforcement, whether it be through our in-depth analysis, proactive contact, or even reactive responses to subpoenas that are provided. But you can see here the amount of information that's available is a lot. And this is across all the networks. Blackhawk Network is no different than any other program manager that manages these types of GPR products. So keep in mind that if you're ever in a situation where you are working with law enforcement, we would be more than happy to be involved with those discussions and investigations, as there is a lot of information that we can provide. Believe it or not, a big misconception across the board with law enforcement is that these products are 100% anonymous and there is no information relating to spend. And that's been one of my biggest initiatives, is just traveling across the country this year, providing information to law enforcement, helping them to understand that these products are not anonymous, that there really is a lot of information that is available to them and at their fingertips. So what we're capable of, just to basically elaborate on our efforts to try and mitigate the fraud, is in-depth analysis, AML monitoring, that's basically the money movement, enhanced due diligence of our high-risk customers, and then further analysis beyond that, linking analysis, putting all of our customers together and identifying the fraudsters versus the good customers. Good customers typically don't go in and buy 5 or 10 GPR products in one day, or even in one 5-minute period. And they typically don't use the same email address or the same phone number or the same IP address. So there's a lot of information that we have at our fingertips to help us identify the fingerprints that the fraudsters are leaving to help us identify what it is that they're doing. Then the slides following basically help try to illustrate what it is that we're doing. This is one single linking analysis that we performed off of, I think that's about 60 accounts. And you see in the middle column, these are all of the accounts that are basically, that were opened by a single fraudster. To your left, you can see that they originated from these 4 different selling locations. And to your right, you can see just the 3 different series of security questions and answers that were utilized when registering these accounts. So this is just a very easy analysis that we can perform to help us link all these accounts together to basically thwart the fraudsters. This is another linking analysis that shows you from left to right reloaded packs that were purchased for victim-assisted fraud scams at those participating locations and then applied to those GPR accounts using those names that were then, and those cards that were purchased at those 4 stores that you see in the middle. And those colored squares there, the green, the orange, the blue, that's showing you the addresses that linked all these accounts together, and you finally follow it all the way to the end and you can see just a small handful of ATM withdrawal locations that linked all these accounts together. So again, paints a good picture on the information that's available to us that we can provide law enforcement that we use on a daily basis to combat the fraud. This right here is a linking analysis that one of my analysts put together. He said, hey, look at this. And I said, hey, that's great. And then I said, okay, what is it? And this is basically all card-to-card transfers in one single day. And I said, that's fantastic, but this doesn't help us. He says, but look at this. That's all the fraud accounts that were linked together because it was multiple transfers linking multiple accounts together as opposed to just one or two transfers that were being conducted between cardholders sharing the same last name. So it's very easy for us to take it from the needle in a stack of needles to finally the end game, which is showing all of the accounts that are linked together, enabling us to be proactive and start combating the fraudsters and shutting these accounts down. And then he shows me this one. I think this was just for him to show off, but this is another linking analysis that showed, I think, a couple hundred accounts that ended up linking together that we were able to shut down before the fraud was ever perpetrated. Further, we look at the tail end, again, the ATM withdrawal location. So this is all ATM withdrawal locations in one single day. And following that, all fraudulent ATM withdrawal locations in one single day. So again, you might see that there was no ATM withdrawal locations where fraud might have been perpetrated in your general area, but that's just because this is one day. It's just one day's focus, and if a fraudster happened to not conduct any ATM withdrawals in that single day, you can tell how the information would not be applicable. But what this does is, again, it helps us to perform some modeling and some patterns and some trending in order to identify how these fraudsters are operating so we can continue to get ahead of them. Something else that we implemented, and I love that slide that Jared showed, I think it was slide 16 where it showed that stop sign, the stop, you know, please be careful with the products that you're buying. That's a sign that Blackhawk Network actually put together for our distribution partners to post in their stores, and many of them are using it, and it's proof that we really are trying to make a good effort on multiple ends to combat the fraud. So basically, walking through the process from start to finish, we can illustrate what's being done to mitigate the fraud. You've got these signs that are being posted near the products. After these products are being purchased, then you have what's called a loss prevention application, which this slide is speaking to. It helps us to identify unusual activities of large quantities of products that are being purchased in the stores at any single given time. It sends out email alerts to the store managers so they can be aware real time as products are being activated of what's occurring in their stores, and they can even offer a block of additional products being purchased. So the victim coming into the store and saying, I need to buy $4,000 worth of reloaded packs because I owe IRS back taxes, or because I owe past utility bills on my office, and I have 100 employees that need to keep on working. This application, if the threshold is set below that limit, which I guarantee they would be, would block additional activations and issue a real-time email alert to the store or to their loss prevention team so everybody can be aware of the fraud as it's occurring or the high-risk activity as it's occurring, and they can work towards mitigation, and they can have a real-time conversation with that customer that they never would have had otherwise. Once you get, excuse me, once you get past the store and you get past the loss prevention application and those real-time alerts and those real-time notifications and the real-time approach to the fraud mitigation, then you get into what Blackhawk Network is doing with the registration that we already spoke to. Tons of personal information being captured and validated against public records and validated against all of our models. And then we have network velocities, and the network velocities identify across all of the network. Anybody who is using the same vendor, which is about 95% of the network, if you see the same IP address being used multiple times across Green Dot and NetSpend and Galileo and Blackhawk, it'll issue out a hard decline, and it won't allow that account to be established just because of the fact that the IP address was used too many times, or the email address was used too many times, or the Social Security number was used too many times. If they get past that, then they go into the actual registration process where it's looking at where the card was purchased versus where the card was registered. A card purchased in Florida and registered to an identity in Michigan is probably not going to pass. It's going to do a hard decline just because it's far outside of a specific geofencing that we've established to be high risk versus low risk. If it gets past that, finally it gets to the actual public records information, the out-of-wallet questioning, and then it goes in and they have an established account. But we even go further. We go into our high-risk enrollment review where we can review all accounts that have been successfully registered, and we can identify any future trends or patterns that were not previously identified at any given time through any of the rigorous models that they've already gone through. So once they get through all that registration process, then they can finally go in and they can register the processes. And they can go through all the amazing products and services that we offer through these products. This here illustrates to you how much the fraud has diminished. And you can see with the implementation of the SAFE, with the implementation of the loss prevention application, with tighter controls on the geofencing, the high-risk enrollment review that my team conducts, you can see a huge diminishment in the amount of fraud that we're seeing, the amount of tickets that are being opened and issues that are being brought to our attention. We've gone from thousands to less than hundreds. Right now, I think my team is sitting on approximately 120 outstanding tickets on a rolling basis, and that's huge compared to the couple thousand tickets that we were managing in the months prior. So it's a good story to tell and definitely a fantastic picture that we can paint as far as our efforts working through the fraud. Lastly, some contact information for me and my team. Any general inquiries that you might have, large investigations, subpoenas, feel free to reach out. I'll be happy to provide you any additional information on some of our processes and some of the efforts that we're making to mitigate the fraud and updates on some of our investigations and whether or not we're helping law enforcement get these people arrested. Just to give you even more information, there is a huge task force that we're working with on a federal level to combat these very fraudsters. I can't give too much more information than that other than the fact that it's being worked on and that there are multiple agencies that are involved and multiple program managers, and we are in communication with them on a weekly basis, managing our way through the fraud, helping them to identify the trends and patterns that they haven't already, and we're also continuously working with our own product development teams to tighten our controls and to provide a better, safer environment for our customers. And with that, I'm going to hand the presentation back over.
All right. This is Rod again. Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Christopher. Very good information. Attendees, now is the time for you to enter your questions into that box in the lower right corner. While you are doing that, I'm going to mention a couple of things. Jared mentioned to you that we will form a LinkedIn group for your benefit. And on that forum, then it'll allow you to work harder on discussing, as Jared said, amongst the bunch of you, that you can discuss your various awareness campaigns, what's going on in your area, what's going on with forwarding these problems to other entities. And then also I do want to mention to you, Christopher, on your one slide is that coincidentally I have received a phone call in the last 10 days. I think it started something like, do not hang up, this is the IRS calling, we've issued a warrant for your arrest. So fortunately, wow. I knew better than to stay on the call, but anyhow.
Yeah, and just as a general FYI to anybody on the call, the IRS has stated multiple times they will never call you. So if you ever have a friend or a family member say that they're receiving these calls, the best thing that they can do is hang up, and you did good by doing that. Thank you, sir. Good.
All right, so we will continue on. And by the way, so this one question, you don't need to identify yourself in the Q&A box. This person's obviously from Canada and asked, does Blackhawk own some of these prepaid cards used in Ontario, Canada? Some of our customers purchased what they claimed were Visa prepaid cards, PaySafe reloadable cards, and Canada Post Safe cards. So, Christopher, on that one?
We do distribute in Canada, and we have a pretty large network of distribution partners, including Canada Post, but these cards are not familiar to me. I will be in Canada in October to present at a pretty large forum on this very topic. with the victim-assisted fraud. Debbie, if you're willing to, send me an email, and we'll connect offline, and I'll let you know when I'll be there and where this presentation is being held, so that way you can attend.
So the next question, and I think this one really goes to both Christopher and Jared. Maybe we'll start with you, Jared. We are seeing this scam targeting towards small business owners, often seemingly with English as a second language. We are confident that our data has not been breached, but do you have any sense of how they are identifying these targets? So, Jared, you want to start on that one?
Sure. Based on the feedback we've gotten in some of our scam reports, and this is just a hunch, but we think that they're using simply Google Maps or some sort of MapQuest or application where they can just look up businesses if they're targeting small businesses, because, and there's two reasons we suspect that. The first of which is that often the scammer can provide the exact address of the closest place that sells the material, the prepaid product that they want the customer to use. Secondly, we see interesting instances where sometimes a scammer will call up a customer and say, your Duke Energy bill is overdue, and they'll say, I'm not a Duke Energy customer. They don't realize that in the map they've crossed over into another utility's territory.
Christopher, any comments on that one?
Yeah, it's basically what these fraudsters are doing is that they're grasping at straws, and they're seeing what's going to stick. You know, take any data breach, pick your flavor, right? Home Depot, Target, Anthem, Blue Cross, there's basically a data breach almost every single month, and I don't think anybody's identity anymore has not been compromised at least once. So you can go online, you can go to the dark web, you can buy 1,000 identities for $20 because there's so many in the market right now. The supply and demand is destroyed due to all the breaches. So these guys will either go to the dark web, they'll just grab a whole bunch of identities and start calling, or they'll just be really good at social engineering. And when they successfully perpetrate the fraud, especially to a business, they may have already called up that business multiple times speaking with other low-level employees to get good, pertinent information to help them facilitate the fraud. And that's what we've seen them do when they hit some of the larger businesses with like the bomb threats or some of the other fraud that we spoke to. So they're just that good. They've got call centers dedicated to this, full of hundreds if not thousands of people, and all they're doing all day long is just making phone calls. And if they make 100 phone calls in a day, and even if only 10 of those are successful, and of those 10 they averaged only $500 a pop, you can see how it's still very profitable for them.
Very good. This next question comes from Texas. I know this person. It seems that the inability to spoof caller ID information is one way to help combat these practices. Do you know if the major telecom providers have an opinion or are engaged in this discussion? Jared, do you want to start on that?
We've had some discussions with telecom providers, and unfortunately, and I'm not an expert on this particular topic, but we have found in some instances that if it's a certain type of 1-800 number that a major telecom provider basically hosts, that they can actually help us get it disconnected. Unfortunately, when it's not one of those major products, it's much more difficult for us to do that. And that's about all I know on that particular topic.
Actually, Jared, go ahead, Christopher.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just saying, unfortunately, a lot of these fraudsters like to use MagicJack, and I can almost guarantee they're one of the telecom providers that isn't all that cooperative.
And Rod, there was a question at the very beginning that was entered at the end of my remarks. Would you mind if I address that one quickly?
Oh, go right ahead.
So the question was, what are the tactics employed once the customer misses a payment? How do you communicate with that customer at prompt payment? So this is one of the key challenges that I know all of us in the utility industry face, and that is how do we make sure that our legitimate customer credit timeline communications are distinct from those that the scammers are using? Well, so the first piece is that a customer would never hear from us the first time over the phone. If a customer is delinquent, they will their next bill, before they're even up for disconnection, will be issued, and it will have a disconnection notice on it. Secondly, in the 6 jurisdictions that we operate in, and I'm sure probably almost all, if not all, across the country require some sort of additional notification. And so they will receive another direct notification from the utility that will not demand payment at that time either. So on the Duke Energy side, customers will see that delinquent bill notice in their next bill. They will get another notification somewhere between 24 and 72 hours before the disconnection date, and we will never demand payment with a prepaid card. We'll never demand payment at that particular time either. And so those are some of the keys that we're trying to stress in our communications that we put out through social media channels and on our website.
And a follow-on point on that, on the Magic Jack and the phone numbers. So in your case, Jared, where these people are providing 800 number callbacks and I assume mimicking Duke's IVR, how long do those things stay alive?
It tends to vary. We've seen some that will show up for a day or two and then you'll call them, they'll be disconnected. We'll see some that'll be on for a while and then you'll call them up and maybe they seem to have shifted over to another scam and then they come back. So I guess that's a long way of saying it varies.
Yeah. Okay. So we had a question, actually it came in at the very same minute mark as the last one. This person asked, any instances where a utility has been accused or held liable due to not using enough due diligence to contact or warn customers about these scams?
From my perspective, I'm not aware of that ever having happened. I know that, obviously we do receive calls from customers who are very flustered, and when they're just starting to realize it's a scam, they first think that Duke Energy is somehow involved. And so it does take certainly a good amount of working with a customer over the phone to help them understand that they were in fact a victim of a scam. And then unfortunately there's very little that we can do for them once that money was stolen because it wasn't Duke Energy who took their money. But I'm not aware of any instances in which a utility has been held liable for not doing enough.
Anything else on that one, Christopher?
No, it's a difficult conversation for anybody, whether it be the utility company or whether it be the program manager. But these products, when they're purchased, it's cash. And someone giving out that number over the phone to another person is no different than you standing on the street corner and handing over $100 bills to strangers as they walk by. The second they're out of your line of sight, that money's gone. And so, again, it's a difficult conversation to have, but, through everything that we've been working on, those signs, our website, there's a ton of public information that we're trying to provide to help people better understand that these scams are out there. And, it's easy to fall victim. We've had people with PhDs fall victim, so it's not like you have to be an unintelligent person to be able to do it. Very intelligent people have fallen victim because the social engineering is just that good.
A good point. So this next question comes from Arizona, and I'm going to add a little bit to the end of it, Jared. In Arizona, the most common prepaid card is Green Dot. Is it possible to stop this kind of transaction through a hotline? But on the Green Dot thing, can you talk about the major prepaid card providers first and then answer the question after that?
Well, I think I should defer to Christopher on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, there's dozens out there, and I can't name them all. Major providers, Green Dot's one of the biggest ones. They really kind of pioneered the world of GPR and prepaid. Beyond them, there's companies like NetSpend. There's obviously the Visa PayPower that my team manages. There's Galileo, which is smaller. The Vanilla Reloaded, which is even smaller. Once you get past those 5 or 6, there's so many out there whose names I just can't even remember. And some of them are so small that the companies like Green Dot and NetSpend and Blackhawk sometimes go and purchase them, and they end up just kind of falling under their umbrella. For the person that's asking about this, contact me, send me an email, or call me after this is over. I can give you an email address and an 800 number to Green Dot's fraud team, so that way you can escalate these issues to them accordingly. How they interact with you and how they manage the process, I can't speak to because you know, we're different companies. They may not be as willing to work with a third party. They may say we need to work directly with the victim. That is the stance of many different institutions, but at least I can help get you connected with them and help get you in contact.
One other thing I guess I should comment is that Jared and Christopher's idea as far as building this electronic community would be that it be open to all of the prepaid providers also, product providers. So let me keep going because we have more questions and we're running out of time. Next question, does Duke Energy help the scammed customer by crediting any part of their bill? Jared?
Yeah, unfortunately, we do not, because, you know, again, to my remarks earlier, is that, you know, Duke Energy obviously has no part in the scam, and while we hate the fact that our customers are suffering from it, we really can't compensate the customer in any way for their loss.
And then we have one more question is, and actually we've answered this electronically, but could the participants get the Q&A via email? These are very good questions, very good answers. So this will be, all of this will be a part of the recording. You can go to our website anytime in the next year. You can fast forward towards the end and pick up all the questions again. So I'm going to close this down right away as we are getting close to the top of the hour. We have time for one question, otherwise we are going to wrap up with a couple of concluding notes. So if you have questions later, I would encourage you, obviously, you can send them back to us. CS Week will send them on. Christopher did have his email on that second last slide, and we will take care of it that way. Stay tuned as far as our LinkedIn community. We will contact you regarding your interest in joining that community. A couple other notes is that we think this is a good topic and that we're planning to have this as a part of CS Week as a workshop this next April. If the LinkedIn community has a real strong support and communication going on, we could also set up a separate meeting for members of that community to get together and talk face-to-face. And, of course, we would ask the prepaid providers if they'd like to be a part of that. So that covers that. Our next webinar in this, as I told you, this is a new webinar series. And so you can see on your screen, Rethinking Utility Customer Care in Our Connected World. And that'll be featuring Todd Arnold, and obviously that's more than a month out. Obviously, we're all going to take a good break here. I'll remind you that Expanding Excellence Awards, we're in our season of where you can submit your award-winning projects. The submission deadline is January 4th, and please get to work on those, send them in. It seems like we always get a very large last-minute rush of people submitting their entries for the Expanding Excellence Awards. One other thing I will say is that we do have registration open for CS Week 2016, that conference in Phoenix in late April. The early bird registration deal will end on March 1, and you can go to our website at any time. You can see that link there to register. So on my final note, thank you, Jared. Thank you, Christopher, for doing such a great job today. I do have to say that this was not, the genesis of this was really Christopher and Jared contacting us and contacting me and saying, you know, this is a topic that just needs to get a lot more airspace across America for utility people. And so obviously CS Week is the right entity to get all of you involved in that. So on that point, thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Jared.